Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about surface area and volume of spheres. So please make sure you have out our little foldable that we created. We're going to put all of our notes in there today. All right, let's get started. So first thing, you guys don't have to write this down. We just want to make sure that we know what the radius, if I'm looking at a sphere, is from the center of the sphere to the outside of our circle. That's going to be our radius. Now, if we cut our sphere right down the middle, you would create two halves called hemispheres. It's going to look something like this. Now, when we think of hemispheres, we can think about a globe. An equator cuts the Earth into the north and south hemisphere. So make sure you guys know this. When we cut it in half, it's called hemispheres. Okay, we're going to have two hemispheres. So if you want to write that down, you can. If you know it, you don't have to write it down. All right, now, when we look at where we cut the sphere in half, we need to know what shape it is. So if I would cut my sphere in half, we're going to notice that that's going to be a circle. Now this is really important. Where we cut that sphere in half, it's called the great circle. It's exactly in the middle. It's cutting our sphere in half. Okay, so if we want to write that down, you absolutely will. It's a good thing to know. The great circle is when you cut the sphere in half. Now, moving on to the meat of what we're talking about. Surface area of a sphere. You have to write this down, okay? To find the surface area of a sphere, it is 4 times pi times r squared. Okay? We're going to do 3 examples with surface area. So if you want to pick which side you're going to write these on, that's fine. But we're going to do 3 examples for surface area. Here we go, the first one. We need to find the surface area of this sphere. So I give you this, the dimension of this sphere is 8 inches. For the radius, we know our equation is surface area equals 4 pi r squared. So what we need to do is plug in our radius, our r. So when we do that, we're going to have surface area equals 4 pi 8 squared. Now, from this point, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to type this all into our calculator. And when we get this, and we're going to round, the surface area is going to be approximately 804.25 inches squared. Now, remember, we're going back to inches squared because we're talking about surface area. All right. Here we go. Now this one is a little bit more complex. You're going to want to write down this question because we're going to see this more than once. If I give you the circumference of the great circle, so that's the distance around our sphere. This right here, our great circle, when we cut our sphere in half, I told you that distance, the circumference, is 25 inches. We need to find the surface area of the sphere. So in order to find surface area like we just did in our last one, we need to know what the radius is. So to do that, we're going to have circumference equals 2 pi r. And we know that our circumference is 25. So to solve this, we're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. Now, this is really important. In your calculator, when you divide by 2 pi, you have to put it in parentheses. If you don't, you're going to get a different number, okay, ladies and gentlemen? So when we do that, I get the radius to be 3.979. After we do that, we're going to plug it into our formula. So surface area equals 4 times pi times 3.79 squared. Now from here, just like we did our last example, type this all into our calculator. And we get the surface area to be approximately 198.96 inches squared. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more example for surface area before we move on to volume. Here it is. It just says find the radius. We don't know the radius, but I do know that my surface area is 804.25. So if I plug this in, now when I plug in information, I know my surface area. I need to find my radius. So I plug in what I know for surface area. 804.25 equals 4 pi r squared. Now when I solve this, I have to get r by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide by 4 pi. Now remember, in your calculator, you have to put this in parentheses. After you do that, we're going to end up rounding. It's going to be approximately 64 equals r squared. Now, to get rid of a squared, we have to take a square root because these are going to cancel each other out, and the square root of 64 is 8. So my radius is going to be 8 inches. That will be my answer. All right? Moving on, now we're going to talk about some volume. Volume of a sphere. So you need this in your notes, okay, on the other side. So right now we have surface area and those 3 examples. Now we're going to have volume of a sphere and 2 examples. Now there's 2 different ways to write this formula. This is one. Volume equals 4 times pi times r cubed divided by 3. Or if you want to think about it like this, volume equals 4/3 times pi times r cubed. These two mean the exact same thing. So if you want to have both of them written down, you can. It's just 2 different ways to look at the same problem. All right, here comes our first example. We've got to make sure we get this in our notes, okay? So the volume of a sphere. We know the formula for volume is volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So that's the one I used for this one. All I need to do is plug in what my radius is. So to do that, I'm going to plug in 2. So volume equals 4/3 pi times 2 cubed. From here, ladies and gentlemen, we can plug this all into our calculator. Okay, we need to make sure we know how to use our 4/3. We also need to know where this cube is. If you don't know how to put in a cube in your calculator, make sure that you ask, okay? Once we plug that all in, we're going to have the volume equals 33.51 centimeters cubed, because now we're back to volume, and volume is cubed. All right, last example, here we go. Make sure we get this one in our notes. This time, just like when it works with surface area, I want you to find the radius. So this one I switched up my formula a little bit. I put volume equals 4 times pi times r cubed over 3. Because I find it easier to work with it this way when I am solving for r. So when I plug in what I know my volume is 33.51 centimeters cubed, so I plug that in. Now in order to solve this, I need to reverse my steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this 3. To do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. When I do that, these cancel, and 3 times 33.51 is approximately 100.53. Now, still trying to solve for r. So to get r by itself, I'm going to divide by 4 pi on both sides. Now remember, when we're dividing, we have to put it in parentheses, okay? Once I do that, I get that this equals 8 equals r cubed. To get r by itself, it's very similar to get rid of a square, but to get rid of a cube, we're going to take a cube root. Now, if you're not sure where the cube root is on your calculator, make sure you ask me, okay? Once we do that, we find that our radius equals 2. Better put a label on it, centimeters. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful, fabulous day, and I will be seeing you later. Bye.